Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Danusha. You have work today?
No, sir, my niece is hospitalized, so I want to go see her after the class.
All right. Okay. That's all right. No problem. So, ABC questions, how are you? All right?
Yes, I actually couldn't look at the rest of them.
Right.
I'm planning to do this weekend only.
Okay, right. Okay. Go through that one and see whether you have any difficulties.
Yeah, sure.
Today we want to move into the area learning curve. I think you know about the learning curve, but let's discuss some of the areas where we can make mistakes in these OT questions, and also what is it all about a learning curve. What do you know about the learning curve, Danusha?
Learning curve is mainly used for labor-intensive companies.
Yeah.
And it's about how the rate at which the employees are learning their
it is basically, I think it's very simply, if you look at, when you go on doing something on a repeated basis, your efficiency will obviously improve because you are learning something and you can do it now. Say, for example, a set of questions, when you do it on the very first time, it may take 1 hour. But the same set of questions, if you do it another time, repeat time, it may take maybe, 50 minutes. When you do it again, it's so now knowledgeable, you can do it in 45 minutes. So like that is what the learning curve is. As you rightly said, it applies in the labor intensive, because machines, we don't have a learning curve. Machines will work at whatever the program speed all the time. People can learn. When people learn and learn and learn and learn, surely that's what we were discussing last time. You remember in the life cycle costing at the growth stage, because of the learning curve, people can do it at much more faster. That means the labor cost per unit will come down, right? So that's what the learning curve is. But we have to realize that however you learn it, I mean, you can learn it, but there's a limit. Say, you can do the first time when you do, you will take 60 minutes. Second time when you do, 55 minutes. Third time when you do, 50 minutes. Next time you do 45 minutes. But surely, I don't think even the most brilliant person can go beyond that one. So the learning curve will stop at one point. So that is what always in our questions we find. Learning curve will work and will stop at one time. So the earlier people who did work, study and all that, it's basically a very theoretical concept. What they have learned is that when you go on doubling the output, say if you are producing 1 unit, if it is going to take 1 hour, when you double the output, the average time, now I want you to note down, it is the average time per unit will come down by a particular percentage, and that percentage is what we call the learning percentage or the learning curve. So for example, they might say the learning curve for this particular industry or the activity is 80%. That means if the first unit is going to take 1 hour, second unit will take only 0.8 hours. 80% of the original 0.8 hours, the average per unit. So that you have to remember. What it means is 0.8 per unit average time. So when they are producing 2 units, it is 1.6 total hours, but per unit it is 0.8. And when they double up from 2 to 4, it will again drop by another 80%. So 0.8 into 80%, 0.64, and so on and so forth. So they have put it into a little bit of a formula which we call y equals ax into power b. So it's a kind of a theoretical model. It may be somewhat closer, but today, even though in the exam it is tested very heavily, if you really look at in practice, it may not be so, because the labor is not perfect today. People come from different backgrounds, people come with different moods, people come with different kind of family problems, and they may not be having the same kind of a learning curve all the time. But if you really have a kind of a setup like in the, say, 40, 50 years back, where the people were more disciplined, people did whatever they were told, no that kind of high unionism and all that kind of a situation. In that kind of a scenario, the learning curve probably would have worked much more than today. But however, in our exam questions, we have a lot of questions on the learning curve. So we should know something about the learning curve. And there are few areas where we can fall into little traps of the examiner. Those are the areas we should be focusing on. So basically it is observed in certain industries, there's a tendency for labor time per unit reduce in time. So as you go on doing per unit, the rate of time will reduce, and because the workers will become more familiar, workers will become more experienced, they can just, as they say, they can just close the eyes and do it. So, but for this kind of a thing to happen, you will agree that the staff turnover rates must be very low. If you are going to have a lot of new people coming up all the time, then you can't think of a learning curve, because they are learning all the time. But if we have the same set of people working all the time, when they learn, they will be there, and therefore the time per unit will come down. And when the time per unit come down, what happens? The cost of labor per unit also will come down. So first time, it's basically a new thing, inexperience, so they will have to try it. But when they go on repeating, so the key word is repeating, the labor cost per unit will decline, because of simply the labor efficiency will increase. But as I said, it will happen up to a particular point. Now, say for example, I'm not talking about you, but there are some students who have done the exam first time, fail, second time, fail, third time, fail, fourth time, fail. Then they get so sick of it, and after that they don't have the desire to learn, and then of course it can just drop it. So that also can happen in the organizations. You go on doing the same old thing all the time, then you get bored, you get sick, and then your efficiency will drop. That's what happens in the decline stage of a product. People are so sick of doing the same old thing. Now, particularly you young people, when you go to office, if you are continuously being told to do the same thing, first 1, 2, 3 months, maybe 2 years, it's all right. But imagine doing the same thing for 25 years, you will really get sick of it, bored of it, and you will not be having the same efficiency. So that can happen to any one of us, and that will happen particularly with the labor. When you go on doing the same thing continuously, up to a point you will learn, after that, in fact, efficiency can decline sharply. That's why we need to promote people. That's why we need to shift the people, change the people's job. We can't expect the same man to do the job for 25 years. Surely he is experienced man, but it is not going to work for him. So basically, this is what happens. Average time per unit, it will start coming down like this, and then it will remain somewhat fixed like this, and of course maybe even after this, if it happens, it may even go up. The average time per unit may even start going up, because the people are so sick of it, and average time can even start pulling up something. So that is also another possibility. So people, organization should be careful not to go beyond this point. If they go beyond that point, the labor can become very inefficient. Basically, this came up with the airplane manufacturing industry, because what they said was, when you go on doubling the output, then the average time taken per unit will come down by a particular fixed percentage, which we call the learning rate, 80%, 90%, something like that. So with this, it is reduced to a formula. So thus the lab hours could be predicted with a high degree of accuracy from learning curve. I think this was somewhat a very theoretical one. I don't think it's right to say with a high degree of accuracy, but this is a theoretical model. Very rarely, I think, the people apply this in the modern world, but still our examiner goes with it. So let's look at it. So the learning curve starts from the point when the first unit comes off the production line. Then on each cumulative 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and when you do that one, the theory says the average time per unit will come down by a particular percentage. So 90% means each cumulative output is double. The cumulative average time per unit falls to 90% of previous one. I want you to ask one simple question here. In a particular organization, say organization A, they say the learning curve is 80%. In another organization, they say the learning curve is 90%. Which organization is better, A or B? A 80%, B 90%. Which is better? A is 80%, B is 90%. Learning curve, A 80, B 90. Which is better?
A.
A is better, definitely, yes. Because it's a good thing that you must know that one, because normally when we say 80 and 90, we think 90 is better, no? But here, it happens the other way about. Because what happens is, if you look at A, let's assume A, and B, it is 80, it is 20%. Okay, let's assume the first unit takes 100 minutes. B also 100 minutes. Second unit, when you double up, A takes only average time per unit is 80. That's what it is. The average time is 90. When you double up, here it is 64, here it is going to be 81. So you can see this is very important, because in our exam time, sometimes we don't have too much of time to think. Higher the learning curve, higher the learning percentage, bad it is the company. Always the lower learning curve is always a better thing, because our mind is set to think 80 is good, 90 is better than 80. But in the learning curve, it works the other way about, because it's a saving what we are looking at. So 80% is much better than 90%. So this is very well needed, because most of our questions you might find this kind of a question coming up. They will say one is 80, one is 90, what is better kind of a thing. Or in a particular organization, for example, it may start with 80 and then it goes to 90. Up to a point it is 80 and then it goes up to 90. And they might ask, what is the reason for that one? What's the reason? So you have to understand the reason will have to be something bad. If it is from 80, if it is going to 90, the reason must be something bad. So there may be a bad reason, like something like high labor turnover. So these are the questions you will always have it in your P2 learning curve. Not necessarily all are calculation questions, but some are lot of thinking questions. Organization which has a learning curve for the first 3 years of 80 suddenly finds the learning curve going up to 90. And they might say, these are the reasons, and they will give it. Right? These are the reasons that they will give it, and then you have to think when it goes from 80 to 90, that means it is bad. So you have to find a bad reason. Now this is what our exam mentality should be, because we don't have time to think like the way that you were thinking today in the exam. So remember that one all the time. Higher the learning curve, bad it is. So learning curve, remember this formula very well. Y equals A into X into power B. Now, you know, Y is the, always remember, I want you to remember that one, Y is the average labor hours per unit. So if you are doing 4 units, the Y gives you average labor hour per unit. If they ask for cumulative, you have to take that Y and multiply by 4. Lot of students make this mistake when they don't read the question carefully, because I was with another student yesterday. One question asked cumulative average time. So always, normally most of the questions are cumulative. You have to multiply. If it is Y is say if it is 16 units, what you get is Y is for 1 unit when you are doing 16 units. So the cumulative time is that Y into 16. But one question examiner asks average time when you are doing 16 units. If you multiply by 16, you get a wrong answer. Because the question was just asking why. Very simple question, but that student went and complicated it by multiplying by 16, because our mind is set always to look at the cumulative. But certain times the examiner might say average time per unit. Average time per unit is simply what you get from Y. And A is the number of labor hours for the first unit. So that's simple. Most of the time that is given in our paper, but sometimes they give the other things and they ask us to calculate the A. So always remember, A is always the first unit. X is cumulative number of units. So it can be 16, 32, 64, whatever it may be. So that's always the number that is given. Now the B is something which I want you to, most of the time the examiner gives us the B. But sometimes the examiner does not give us the B, but he says the learning curve is 80%, right? Without giving the B. So we know B is log learning curve rate divided by log 2. So you have to have your scientific calculator. When you say 80%, remember it is log 0.8, not log 8, log 0.8. Have you got the calculator with you, Janusha, at the moment?
Yeah.
Can you calculate straight away? 80% learning curve, log 0.8 divided by log 2. Log 0.8 divided by log 2. Not log 0.2.
0.4244.
0. No, calculate again. Log 0.8 divided by log
0.4244. 45.
Fine, how are we getting that one? Let's see again.
Log
0.8.
Log 0.8.
Yes, log 0.8 divided by
log 2.
Log 2, yes. Log 0.8 divided
minus,
by yes, minus
0.3219.
3219, isn't it? That's the right answer. Now can you calculate for 95% learning curve? 95%. Examiner says the learning curve is 95.
0.740.
0.74. Yeah, 0.0744. No, yes, correct. Right. So that's the way. So you have to remember, sometimes the examiner gives us, If it doesn't give, it is always, when you say log 80%, it is log 0.8 divided by log 2. Always the base is log 2. So don't take log 0.2, but it is log 2 always, the base. But the top is always, it's a decimal. When you say 80.8, when you say 65, it is 0.65. So remember that one, because these are some of the mistakes which we cannot afford in our paper. So let's assume a new product will take 100 hours. So complete the table. So this is sometimes they don't ask us to apply the formula, but they ask us to take the thing and do a little bit of a formula. So shall we work out this one? So the first time it is going to take 100 hours. First unit is going to take 100 hours. The total time is 100. Right? Now when they double up, so average time per unit is 100. Double up, what's the average time per unit? If the learning curve is 80. First column.
80.
80, right, 80. What's the total time?
180.
160, no? 80 into 2. Average time is 80, right? So total time is 80 into 2, 160. Average time per unit is 80, right? 80 into 2 is 160. What about when you double it to 4 units?
64.
64. What's the total time?
64 into 4.
Yeah, 6.4 to 56.
256.
Isn't it? So you can see now when you go from 1 to 2, how many incremental units? 1 unit, right? One additional unit. What's the additional time you are going to take? 60 minutes, 60 hours. When you go from 2 to 4, how many incremental units? 2 units. And for that 2 units, what's the incremental time? 160 to 256 minus 256 is 96. You can see this is how this table is getting built up. So I said some questions without putting the formula. They put up something like that and they want us to fill this kind of a thing. They might fill some of the things and keep some of the things blank for us to fill it. So we must know the fundamentals also, not only to remember the formula, but this is how it works it out. So when the moment they go up to 8, 64 into 0.8, total time is that amount into 8 times over. Right? So this kind of a table is very important for you to understand, because these are some of the things, because examiner in the last couple of reports have been saying students know the formula very well. Students they know the formula very well, they have memorized it, but they don't know the rationale behind the formula or the thinking behind the formula, and that's what so now they do this kind of questions, putting up certain tables and allowing your mind to think in that exam hall how it works out without the formula. That's the way it works it out. So this is a little bit of exercise we're going to do. Fill the earlier table with the formula now. So first one, what we saw was A was 100. To work out the B. Can you work out the B for 80%? I think we worked it out earlier. But can you work out the B for 80%?
Yeah. it is 3
minus
0.3219.
minus, no?
0. Yeah.
0.32
3219.
3219. Okay, so that's the B. So then calculate the average time per unit for first 25 units. So I want you to take the formula y equals x into power b. Calculate the average time per unit. So I just want you to work out this answer to see whether you can get A is 100 into 25.
Yeah. 35.48.
Yeah, 35.48. Just a minute. Yeah, 2500. Yeah, 35.48, no? So that's the average time when you are doing 25 units. So what's the cumulative for 25 units?
887.
Right, that's good, yes. Now the next part is another difficult one, not a difficult one, a very standard one. Calculate the time it takes to make the 20th unit. Now how do we do that one? How do we do that one? We want to find the time that is going to take for the 20th unit. Can you remember how we apply the formula?
Yeah.
First of all, we had to apply for
the 19th unit.
Hmm?
And then we have to calculate again for 20th unit, and then
yeah,
that's the time that
you have to calculate for the 20 units the cumulative time.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Right? We have to calculate the cumulative time for the 20 units, the total time, and then we have to calculate is it the 19th or the 21st?
The 19th.
19. So we have to calculate the total time for 19 units. I first take the y19, then multiply by 19. So we know the time that is going to take for the 19 units. Then calculate for the 20 units. The difference between that is the time that we have taken for the 20th unit, correct?
Yeah.
That's the way that you will work out through this formula. And sometimes the examiner might say at the 20th unit, the learning curve stops, and from there it goes on a flat rate or something like that. So these are the variations you might have in the exam. So eventually, as I said, the learning curve will cease, and then after that, for every successive unit, it will be the constant same thing. Just like as I said, it may stop at the 20th unit. So for example, we will work out per 20th unit, and then if the learning curve stops, then up to the 20th cumulative, you will take the cumulative time and then apply that 20th time into the next 5 units, if it is 25 units, and then work out the total time. That's how you will work out the scenario. So always there's a limit to manual and other factors, and therefore you have to stop the learning curve. The learning curve will stop and you have to look at it. So where the learning curve becomes very, very relevant for pricing decisions, because the more we produce, the more the learning curve, average cost per unit can come down due to labor reduction. So initial cost estimate can be very high, but it can fall through learning curve. This is where we were talking last time, where we said that because of the learning curve, growth stage cost per unit will come down. And we will get a kind of a competitive advantage through learning, and therefore we will be able to reduce the price. The porters competitive advantage can come into play through the learning curve here. So this is a very important one. The general conditions for learning curve to apply, and as you rightly said at the very beginning, activity should be something labor intensive. Machine intensive ones, there is no learning curve. Because the machines are working at a particular program rate, there is nothing for the machines to learn, and therefore it will not work out in a machine intensive industry. Process should be something very repetitive, very standard. If you are going to do different types of things at different times, then the learning curve may not apply. So this is the scenario most of the time with JIT, the learning curve may not apply. Because the JIT, you will work it out at different batches, etc. So you can't think of a learning curve there. Labor turnover should be very low. If you have lot of people, you know, releasing, will you give me a second, Anusha?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the labor turnover, always this is one of the very famous examiner question. Labor turnover should be very low. If you are going to have new labor coming up all the time, then you can't expect the learning curve to work because they will be learning all the time. They will not have the experience to apply the learning curve. And there has to be no prolonged breaks between production. So for example, if the examiner says that material arrivals, there are delays, then you can't expect the labor learning curve to work, because the people, when they go for a little bit of a break and come back, that rhythm will not be there any longer. So that's why I say the people who fail the exam, I say sit for the exam as quickly as possible, because the moment you delay, what happens is that your learning, your interest, everything goes off. It's very difficult to go back and to get back into the stream straight away. So you should not have prolonged breaks. So this is why in Sri Lanka, I don't think we will have a learning curve, because all the time our people are on strike and everything. So they can never learn things, and there are a lot of breaks between one to the other. It's an experience curve. Experience curve is simply not only the labor, but it also covers other costs also. So something like material cost. When you try to work through with the people continuously, it's not only the labor that you will be saving, but even material wastage, right? It can be the quantity discounts that you are going to get, but also things like the material wastage, because you're working with some people with lot of experience. So material cost will decrease slightly with quantity discount, but will not decrease by large amount. But variable overheads also can change because the way that you have learning, experiencing. So this is another new development. Now the people are talking not only about the labor learning curve, but because of the labor learning curve, the experience that comes up, which will be what we call the experience curve. And obviously the fixed overhead per unit will come down because more you produce, your fixed overheads are same, it gets divided by many number of units and therefore it will come down. So these are some of the things what we need to know about the learning curve. So with that, I have finished that area. Learning curve actually nothing much of a big theory, but we need to know a little bit of calculations how to do it. So we will look at doing the numbers later on. Next area we are going to look at something called responsibility centers. It's a fairly a big area. It's all about what we call responsibility centers. What do you know about this? These are what we call in your own organization. You have various divisions, isn't it? Finance division, HR division, like that. So each division has its own areas delegated to them. So this happened purely with the expansion of the size of a company. Now if you look at a small organization, husband and wife and daughter running a business, you may not have separate divisions because everyone will do everything. Now if you go to a country like Singapore, even Sri Lanka, we find some little restaurants run by the father, mother and the daughter maybe. So they do everything. Mother is looking at the finance, father is doing the cooking, whatever. They do everything because you can't delegate responsibility. You have to work it together. But in a big organization, like in the company that you work, you can't do that one. You have to assign responsibility to various particular parties, divisions, functions, etc. And when you do that one, we need to remember all the time that we have to have something to measure their performance, monitor their performance, and reward them with their performance. And to do that kind of a thing, we have to have something called responsibility center. This arises mainly through what we call decentralization. If it is one centralized organization, one place where every decision is being taken, everything is being handled, then there is no decentralization, there is no need of a responsibility center. So decentralization or divisionalization seeks to overcome the problem of managing a large organization. When the organization becomes larger and larger, two eyes are not enough to look after the business all the time. So I was having a chat with Mrs. Prestanji, the Aban's chairman. She told me earlier she started her business as a little garage sale long time back. She, with her own two eyes, she could look at everything what was happening. And then later on when the children grew, with the children's eyes and her eyes, she could see everything. But today the organization is so big, even the mother and the children are not good enough. So she has to have lot of managers, everyone to care, to look after, because your two eyes, your four eyes, six eyes are not enough. So when you are managing a large organization, what we do is we decentralize or we divisionalize the organization. And basically, the letters in red is very important. Several autonomous decision-making units. The idea is we decentralize the finance division and we tell the finance division, hey, within the broad guideline of the company, you can manage your division. So the finance manager don't need to go and ask the managing director all the time, can I give leave to Dhanusha? The finance manager can take that decision because he is given the authority to take autonomous decision. This is the way for decentralization to happen. But unfortunately, it so happens sometimes, even though we call autonomous units, It is not so in both in the private sector and in the government sector. Still, for every little thing, you have to go to the minister. To transfer a little girl, you have to go to the minister and get his permission, because the minister is the person who has put that person. In private sector organizations, sometimes I was working in a particular company. Every time when a person has to go out for 15 minutes to go to the post office and come, managing director has to sign the leave chit or the exit chit or gate pass. That is absurd. That's not real decentralization. If it is real decentralization, that decentralized units will be able to make autonomous decisions, but of course within the company policy. When the company says people must work from 8 to 5, that finance manager should follow that one. But for some person who has to go a little bit out and come back, he should be able to take that decision. What are the objectives? Objective is what is called goal congruence. Now, what is goal congruence, Dhanusha? What is it? What do you mean goal congruence?
Goal congruence is when now all the divisions should have one goal.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Basically, goal is the aim, right? Goal is aim. Congruence is same. All must work with the same aim. That is very important, because if finance is working on their own without thinking about the company, if HR is working without thinking about the company, they are working on their own goals. And if sales is working on their own goals without looking at the cost and everything, then of course it is going to be a real mess. So all the time it must be working on something. Every division must work on same goal. That's what we call goal congruence. It's not easy. It's a very difficult thing, because the people are people. They have their own perceptions, their own thinking. Those things can come and color, and things can get distorted. So we have to have a very strong alert on that one. Finally, everyone must work towards one common corporate objective. Whether you're finance, whether I'm sales, whether I'm marketing, we must work on one corporate objective. That is what we call goal control. Of course, obviously, it increases the motivation of management, because it's not like just having one full unit. Now you are working for a separately identifiable division. So when you work hard, your finance manager will recognize, your sales manager will recognize, you might get even a reward or a bonus, others which may not get. So it basically drives you to do your task much more better in a decentralized setup rather than in a centralized setup. And the idea is that it must reduce head office bureaucracy. Again, this is a questionable one, but the real idea, the concept of decentralization is head office not put their finger for every little thing. Let the divisional head decide what they can do, what he wants. Let the divisional head decides what kind of a staff he wants. So if head office is going to say, no, look here, you must take so and so and work it, that's not proper decentralization. Also, it gives an opportunity to train people at the junior level and middle management level to greater levels, because you're working on a decentralized unit. Your finance manager knows how good Dhanusha is, so she can give the training that is necessary, because if you're in one large big organization, you will be lost in that organization. No one will know your capabilities, no one will know your abilities, anything. But when you work in a small decentralized unit, your head will recognize your skills, head will recognize your various weaknesses, and they should be able to do something and train you, and that kind of a thing can come up much more flexible, much more effectively in a decentralized unit. What are the disadvantages? The disadvantages is what we call dysfunctional decision making. So dysfunctional is something that we talk about all the time. Dysfunctional is the things going upset. Right? Something which is going upset all the time. So decentralized, dysfunctional decision making. So this is one of the biggest disadvantages of decentralization, dysfunctional decision making, that decisions will be taken at individual departmental level, which is detrimental to the main organization. Now, for example, your finance division might decide to just to reduce the cost of the finance division to employ unqualified people without employing qualified people. Of course, they can buy it at cheaper rate, but that may have a massive impact on the company's quality of financial reporting, quality of management reporting, etc. Now, for example, you might decide, I was working in a company, we had our own printing division, but our other divisions decided to get their own printing from outsiders, saying our own internal printing division is very expensive and they don't give it to you on due dates, etc. And they went and got it from outside. And guess what happened? The printing division in our own company, they were without work because the people are not getting enough work. And the others were going outside and getting. And guess what happened? Ultimately, the printing division had to close it down. So that can happen. These are what we call dysfunctional behavior, because when you give that autonomy, people can misuse that autonomy knowingly, deliberately, or sometimes ignorantly. Whatever the reason, it can create some kind of a what is called dysfunctional behavior, which is not the goal congruence we are looking at. People will look at from their own interest. So, in fact, some managers, go to the extent of saying, don't go and tell the other division what you are doing. So you don't share your knowledge. Sometimes Anusha may have some good knowledge which you can go and give it to the HR division. But your finance manager says, don't go and talk with those people. So you try to get compartmentalized. You try to work in your own interest rather selfishly, forgetting the organization completely. So this can happen all the time. You might think, you're looking all the time in your own interest. So you fight inter-departments without looking at the entire organization as a whole. This can be a very, very dangerous, sad situation for many organizations. However, these disadvantages can be somewhat overcome by introducing something called performance evaluation. So every time whenever we had decentralization, we must think of introducing what we call performance evaluation. This is very important. So idea of the performance evaluation should be goal congruent. Now this is not very easy because every organization, department will try to work on their own self-interest, but the senior management at the top level, at the board of directors, must be looking to introduce performance evaluation based on entire organization, but accountable, responsible for your own division. These are the things what we are going to learn a little later. Must encourage initiative and motivation. Today, particularly the younger generation of the managers, they are coming, they want lot of initiation to be done by themselves. They don't want to do what the boss says. They want something much more a kind of an opening for them to use their brains and to do something. So, your performance evaluation system must be something like that. At the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, your boss must call Dhanusha and ask, hey Dhanusha, what are the new things that you did in our organization? What are the new ideas you have? So you try to, stimulate the brains, stimulate the minds so that the people will think something new, something fresh and come out with something good. Always, whenever we have a performance evaluation, feedback is very important. This is where you and I, as management accountants, we have a role to play. The way to do the performance evaluation is by having good feedback. I must know whether the performance evaluation tools that I was given, whether I have achieved it or not. So I must get a feedback. Did I achieve the return on capital employed what they told me? Did I achieve the sales figure which they told me? So they must give a feedback. Then only I will realize, oh, I have not. I have to do something better. Oh, I have done. Yes, I can be very happy. I must do something more. That kind of a thing must come up. So this is where performance evaluation is very, very important. So these are some of our short questions in the OT paper. And always, whenever we do a performance evaluation system, it must encourage long-term views than short-term views. This is a difficult one to adopt, but we must always try to do it. Because if you go on very long-term, very short-term thing, they will try to reduce the quality of the product, quality of the service, quality of the reporting, because they want to reduce the cost of that particular division or department, which is very dangerous, right? Immediately you can have a lot of cost savings, but on the other side, you might find your business is dropping. You are not doing because your quality has come down, people are not coming. Immediately you will have big cost savings, but on the long term it can be very, very dangerous. So therefore, we must have long-term views whenever we are setting whenever we are setting divisional performance measures, we must look at a long-term thing. So like new investment. Now, for example, if you are running a department, the moment you make a new investment, a new machine, your depreciation cost will go up immediately, right? And your month-end profit may be very low, little, because of the high depreciation. And the manager may get demotivated. Oh my God, I bought a new machine and therefore my profit has come down. Whereas the other party did not buy a new machine, his profits are big. So if you are going to pay a bonus based on the profit after depreciation, the man who thought very long term and thought of replacing the machine will get very, very disturbed and disappointed. So we have to think how to measure the performance. Should we take the performance before depreciation? Something like that. So we have to look at it from a long-term point of view. Staff training. If a manager is told that you're going to measure on year-end profit, he might not want to do any staff training because he's wanting to save the cost and to show a bigger profit. But on the long term, when you don't train your staff will become very poor and they may not be able to do the work. So because of that, we must encourage that kind of long-term view. So these objectives can be achieved with the introduction of what we call responsibility center. So decentralized unit with performance evaluation measures are what we call responsibility center. What is a responsibility center? Responsibility center is basically a specific manager is given the responsibility to manage that organization or that particular center with reference to a budget. He's given a budget, he's given certain target, and he's told, hey, we are going to measure your performance based on how you manage your responsibility center. Finance division can be a responsibility center. HR division can be a responsibility center. IT division can be a responsibility center. Sales division can be a responsibility center. In your place, claims division can be a responsibility center. So, whoever who is leading that department or the responsibility center is made accountable for the actual performance. So you are given targets and then you will be measured on actual performance. So you are made responsible for their area of responsibility. Now in your company, maybe the insurance selling head is given a particular responsibility saying he must sell so many millions of policies for a particular month or a year, whatever it may. So he is made accountable, responsible. So he must do that one. Finance division, they may be told every month end, within next 3 days of the working days, they must prepare the monthly accounts and give it to the board of directors. 45 days after the end of the financial year, the financial reports must be ready for the audit. So you are made responsible. So you have to do. It's like something like target specific, deadline oriented. And that area on which you are responsible is called a responsibility center. So within an organization, there will be a hierarchy of responsible centers. At the lower level, you will have many responsible centers, but as you go up and up, it will be little responsible centers. So responsible centers can be 3 items. Actually, there are 4: cost centers, profit centers, revenue centers, and investment centers. Cost centers, profit centers. Another one should get included now, revenue centers and investment centers. So they are basically what we call the responsibility center. Cost centers, profit centers, revenue centers, and investment centers. So each cost center, profit center, and investment center should have its own budget, should have its own targets, and they must be measured on. And also, every manager should be provided with budget information. The idea is for control and also for performance management. So these are the things of the responsibility center. So when we meet next week, we will look at these responsibility centers and their performance measures in detail when we meet next week. How is your calendar next week, Danusha? Monday, Tuesday?
So next,
Yeah?
yeah, I'm okay. Only thing is from Monday work starts at 12:30.
All right.
Because there's this daylight saving. So
All right. Yeah. From tomorrow, Sunday, no? Yeah. You want to do it a little early?
So yeah, so if we can have from 10 to 11.
Okay, no problem. So shall we do Monday 10 to 11 or Tuesday? What do you want? Monday is all right?
Yeah,
okay.
Monday is fine.
So we'll do Monday 10 to 11, okay?
Okay, sir.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Right, bye.
Bye.